Hi, Max here with FrizWoods, and in this video, I am going to talk about what a probation before judgment is, how one is awarded, and then talk a little bit about the new form of probation before judgment here in Maryland, or the PBJC as we call it. So first and foremost, if you're watching this video, you might be wondering what a probation before judgment is. A probation before judgment is a disposition here in Maryland, meaning it's a finding in a criminal case. Now, it's not a guilty finding, but sometimes it comes after a guilty finding, whether that's at a plea or a trial. Other times, for example, under the PBJC, a guilty finding is not required. In fact, a guilty finding is avoided. So first and foremost, what happens when someone's awarded a probation before judgment? In a practical sense, the judge says, I'm not finding this person guilty, and instead I'm placing them on probation, hence the probation before the judgment. But in practice, the way that a probation before judgment is awarded sometimes does require a person either plead guilty or be found guilty before a judge sort of undoes that probation or undoes that judgment or crosses it out and puts you on probation beforehand. So let's talk first about the traditional probation before judgment. This is the most commonly used in criminal courts. So if a person has a trial and is found guilty or enters a plea and similarly found guilty, a judge may strike that guilty finding at the end of the sentencing and grant the person a probation before judgment. If the judge does that, a person must waive their right to appeal the decision in the case because there's no judgment from which to appeal. So if the judge grants you probation before judgment, what does that do for you? Well, first and foremost, it's not a guilty finding. So if you're applying for a job that wants to know if you've ever been found guilty, you can say, no, I've been granted a probation before judgment. Although word of caution when dealing with federal agencies and employers out of the state, many times the distinction of probation before the judgment is lost upon them. And they might consider that as a basis not to give you employment or deny you something. Having said that, in our state, a probation before judgment is designed to not inhibit you. It's designed for you to be able to treat it like not a conviction. So if that applies, let's say, for the example for expungement. Well, some criminal offenses, let's say carrying a transportation of a handgun outside of your home, where carry transport offense under criminal article 4203. Let's say you're found guilty in one of those, and a judge grants you probation before judgment. Now that offense is actually expungible in 3 years, whereas before it might not be. So that's one of the benefits of a probation before judgment, in addition to the whole I've not been convicted spiel. So if a judge grants you probation before judgment, you are usually placed on some form of probation, and that could be supervised or unsupervised, and we can talk more about that in another video. But essentially, you are usually given terms of your probation as a condition of the probation before judgment. And if you mess up by violating the probation, committing a new offense, the judge can take that away from you, call back that probation before judgment, and undo the striking. Now, Maryland has also come up with a new form of probation before judgment, or the PBJC. So under Maryland Criminal Procedure 6220C, a new form of probation before judgment was born, and in that particular disposition, the word guilty is not present. A person doesn't plead guilty, they don't have a trial when they're found guilty. Instead, the judge, the prosecutor, and the defendant all come to an agreement that the person is going to be placed on probation without being found guilty. And that will also happen before a judgment. And there's special paperwork and a special colloquy that's done in court, the benefit of which is supposed to be for people, primarily those affected by potential for removal or deportation. But there are also expanding fields where a non-guilty finding PBJ can be useful. So every day there's really, honestly, a new way that might benefit you. So in sum, if you're looking for a probation before judgment, in the traditional sense, you may have to plead guilty or be found guilty. If you're looking to get the agreement form of PBJ, PBJC, then you, your attorney, the state, and the judge all have to agree, which is not always easy. And that is essentially what a probation before judgment is. It's being placed on a probation before the judgment, striking that guilty finding, or perhaps avoiding it ever being said in court at all, and then being given some terms of probation. This is usually reserved for first-time offenders on misdemeanor cases, although sometimes it is given out on felonies, rarely, but sometimes it is. And it is generally subject to the conditions of a traditional probation. If you've got a criminal case, or you want to have your sentence modified to a probation before judgment in Maryland, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'd be happy to help if we can. Good luck.